So, a lot has happened this week. I started writing this script and most of the intro changed over the weekend. First off, we need to address and acknowledge that in some cities, black people are burning stuff because they're frustrated and angry. In some cities, they're doing it because cops attack them for peacefully protesting after following all the rules. In some cities, outside agitators started the fires. In some cities, the cops instigated the riots. In some cities, the burning came about from racists wanting to start a civil war. This is probably true in all cities, but the different amounts are different for each city. All of these appear to be true, but we can't tell who's doing what in which city, so acknowledge all of it. Many leftists online are mad that people aren't saying this is a revolution. It's a centrist plot to play down the violence as a legitimate form of protest. All are true. We will discover the truth from the ashes when things finally calm down. There will be legitimate burnings from anger. There will be legitimate burnings because they followed the rules and cops still attack them. But there will also be burnings that were done that black people had nothing to do with and opportunists just wanted to break stuff and loot. It's a tornado of different truths. It's not one narrative. Acknowledge and accept it. It's reality. And while the vandalism is a form of protest, the looting is mostly a tactic used by criminals at nearly every major protest to use the opportunity to strike when cops are too tied down waging war on civilians to do anything to catch them. And then people ask, why are they destroying their own community? Same reason why they would break in anywhere. Here in Philly, they're hitting Targets and Best Buys for their electronics and pharmacies and medical marijuana dispensaries for their drugs to sell, then torching them to burn the evidence, and appear just part of the vandals protesting. Black Twitter is pissed as hell about it, especially with all the shortages thanks to COVID, and many disabled people are hurting because they have to get their meds and can't because the nearest functional drugstore is now 40 minutes away. Secondly, Thursday, now I believe, I listened to the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, and you could tell he was baffled and confused as to how this whole travesty happened against George Floyd. You can tell he probably cares, but feels completely helpless and is floundering about why this is happening. As they say, don't question authority, they don't know either. The former first black governor of Virginia, Douglas Wilder, in his speeches to young people, told them to get into politics because he knew so many people in politics who didn't have a clue about anything other than getting elected. I see leftists completely snark at liberals for not hating cops, for feeling shocked that this was even a thing. Cops have gone out of their way to be nothing but professional and responsible and appear caring and protective to middle-class white people. That's all part of the propaganda. That and the percentage of good cops they mount up as poster children as a shining example of what all cops are. I, as a white, middle-class, straight-edge looking, probably Christian male, have literally never had a negative experience with a cop. Never. That is by design, like the sleazy, manipulative kid you knew who could pretend to be such a nice boy to your parents and grandparents and get away with anything, much like Mike Pence. White people can yell, kick, scream, and the cops will take it and will act completely professional. This is so they can keep doing anything they want to when kind-hearted white people aren't looking. But that is cracking. It started when cameras first started getting introduced into phones and there was a long string of deaths. This is the exact same tactic the South used to keep lynchings mostly quiet from the rest of the government, and why it took decades and a ton of courageous work of journalists to shove well-meaning white people's faces into the lynchings like that of Emmett Till. There was resistance, there was denial as their image that sort of thing could ever happen in their America, and then finally acceptance and fighting back in the end. Cops are pretty much an independent organization, but with funds from cities, and they know how to manipulate the public and the city government to get what they want. However, now the press is turning on them. Videos of children getting pepper sprayed, journalists getting targeted for arrest, the cops in Cincinnati taking down the American flag and replacing it with that bastardized Blue Lives Matter flag that completely violates the flag code that citizens don't legally have to follow, but government agencies are supposed to follow, but somehow they get away with it. A knee on a protester's neck. Peaceful protesters herded into an area to be gassed, specifically targeting journalists for arrest, especially minority journalists. A photojournalist shot with tear gas canister on purpose as he laughed. Oh, and since tear gas is an expectorant, COVID cases are going to shoot up again, especially in elderly black populations who are already vulnerable. This is biowarfare. It's like they're actively trying to destroy all credibility they have had with white America in one weekend. Sadly, the lawmakers are completely clueless as to fix any of this. They really don't understand or know what must be done to fix this. The police force must be completely reorganized, or this will just keep happening and never stop. They gullibly thought body cams would fix things. Yeah, cops have been shutting their body cams off during the protests. Governor Cuomo is trying to push through a bill making all cops' bad behavior records available to the public. This should have been done decades ago, and it's a start, but baby steps. I have a playlist below of videos I've made on police violence and what changes need to be fixed, but here they are in a condensed form that everyone needs to understand before real change can happen. These 8 basic things must happen to make cops the barest minimum safe for the public. Number 1, independent police and FBI prosecutors. DAs and prosecutors work with the police force and the FBI all the time, so they end up biased or owing cops favors to get a conviction. All they have to do is put together a flimsy prosecution effort, and the cop can get off without a conviction. If they don't, the police will be less likely to work with them, making it harder for a prosecutor's career. That's what's happening with Philly's DA, and cops actively hate and refuse to work with him for it. Number 2, make rookie training part of the entire police force instead of one guy near retirement who may be bitter and used old violent tactics. Everyone coming out of the police academy is trained on how to de-escalate a situation and all the non-violent ways to deal with the public, but get stuck in their first essentially internship for 1 year, usually with a burnout cop 10 years from retirement who doesn't want to be there and may be there for bad behavior himself. If at the end he doesn't sign off that you are ready to be a cop, you have to go through another year, or in another precinct. He may tell you to forget everything you learned at the academy, this is the real world, and actively punish you for de-escalating violence and only pass the people who are cool with violence and trading favors. Robert Evans' podcast, It Could Happen Here, discusses in the very last chapter the better way are police treating rookie training as a group job where everyone is a mentor and they can all see if the person is fit or unfit to be a cop. They will prevent violent bullies from getting through so easily and not block good people who got into law enforcement to actually serve and protect and refuse to do anything but try and de-escalate when the situation calls for it. Number 3, allow the majority of a cop seniority to transfer to different precincts so you can leave a corrupt force and still have the same seniority. At the moment, you essentially start off at the bottom again with just a little seniority if you move to a different precinct. This, in theory, is because you don't know the area and haven't made community ties yet, but it appears community ties aren't really that important to many cops. This ensures you will have to trade favors, stay in a corrupt force, and pick your battles and sometimes look the other way if you ever want to be promoted. Number 4, well-paid and plenty of public defenders will reduce the drive to harass poor people and let other people go, because right now it creates a good arrest-to-conviction rate, and that also determines your promotion. Number 5, end for-profit prisons. Number 6, zero tolerance and active investigation of hate groups in the police force or domestic violence, and this should be a no-brainer, but it's not. Number 7, teach cops, or at least detectives, how to spot the signs of trauma, such as faulty memory, so they don't dismiss or get hostile with trauma survivors and call them liars. Number 8, end civil asset forfeiture, as cops have stolen 7 times the amount of money legally this last year than all the burglaries combined. Without these 8 very basic changes that will completely upend the police force, and everyone understanding them, and understanding that most of these can only happen if we vote in state and local elections like clockwork, the police force will be made up of violent thugs and neutral cops who look the other way, making them just as bad. This channel is helped tremendously by the generous supporters on Patreon. A big thank you to the wonderful Joe Taylor, Elias Garcia Guevara, and Ogrel for their support at the $10 a month Wapawet level. Please consider donating to my work if you can, and thank you all for listening.